Discussion notes for chapter 4. Um, the consumer revolution. The average person's ability to spend money on consumer goods became a sign of their respectability. Historians call this process the consumer revolution. What this actually was at one time only the elite had certain items, the ability to purchase certain things. Well, this new um, system of credit that came into place allowed people to buy things over time. And their ability to buy things over time created a new happening as to where common people could have some of the quote unquote luxuries of the elites, where some things that were once one time an elite commodity is now becoming commonplace. And the consistent availability of credit allowed families of modest means to buy consumer goods previously available to elites only. Between 1725 and 1775, slavery became increasingly significant in the northern colonies as urban residents sought greater participation in maritime economy. So the more the common people are moving into trade and economics, the more slavery is moving into northern non plantation states or colonies to do the actual work. So slavery is still moving north and south. So in the 13 colonies, all of them had slavery. But this consumer revolution, where colonists are being pulled into the economic stratosphere, is now moving slavery up to do the work. South Carolina was the only mainland colony with the majority enslaved population. And again, this was between 1725 and 1775. And the Stono Rebellion comes about in 1739, where 80 slaves rebelled in Spanish Florida. This is 52 years before the Haitian Revolution. So while slavery is growing in the colonies, so is slave resistance. So as the colonists are working toward their dissatisfaction against their oppressors, as they see it, England working towards 1775 when the American Revolution happened. The enslaved are working toward 17 is it 1791? Yeah, 1791, early 1790s when the Haitian Revolution started, which was the largest and only successful slave revolution in the Western Hemisphere. But you do have Nat Turner's rebellion, you do have Denmark Vesey's rebellion, you have quite a few, and Stono being one of them, and the Stono rebellion was in 1739. Now, the Quakers were the first group of European people to turn their back on slavery. They believe, one, they were nonviolent. They believed in the fundamental equality of all human souls, and they were pacifists. So the ideology of slavery just did not compute with them, which, again, obviously, the Quakers were a group that really began to look into who they were from a religious standpoint as opposed to an economic standpoint. And it wasn't just the Quakers that did that. There were many of the New England colonies did that, but they didn't turn their back on slavery. The Quakers embodied morality completely, as opposed to keeping it in different categories. Money and whatever I have to do for money is over here. God and being a granting salvation or gaining salvation is over here. The Quakers didn't believe you could be heinous in business and glorious in spirituality. But most of your Protestants did. We have to understand North American um, colonies were Protestant colonies. The Catholic colonies were in Canada and in the southern portion of the hemisphere. So the Great Awakening began in New England in 1730 and extended all the way through the 1750s. Um, this was a desire to strip themselves of worldly concerns and return to a more pious life. Now, that's exactly what the book said, a pious life. And if you look up pious, it means a hypocritical stance of virtue. So now the reason why we're saying that this is a hypocritical stance of virtue is because you're enslaving and oppressing people. For all you're oppressing women, you're murdering, you're stealing, but you're claiming a desire to be closer to the divine. So that's why it was, described that way. Where are we? They wanted to reform religion in America and created, and this reform of religion had many characteristics that's too leading us toward the American Revolution because these people are now thinking as individuals. They're questioning the leadership of the church. And if you're going to question the leadership of the church, that's now setting the ground to question any and all leadership. If you're questioning the idea or ideal of God, why would you not question the idea of government, the ideals of government leadership? In this nesting of thought is now permeating society, helping people to begin to question leadership and begin to think of themselves as individual equal powers. Because not only was this was in Christianity, but you got to understand this is Protestantism, this is Methodist, this is Lutheran, this is Quakers, this is Puritans, this are all kinds of denominations where people are saying, I can do this the way I think it should be done. And that's ultimately what's happening with these governments as well. So, with that going on, we also have now the 7 Years' War. Now, the 7 Years' War is Britain against France. And then each kind of pick up native allies. But what is very important to be known, neither one of them care about the natives. They're using the natives. Because at the end of this war, the war went from 17, it's called the 7 Years' War, but it lasted 9 years. It began when George Washington, yes, that George Washington, fighting as a colonist on behalf of Great Britain, killed a French diplomat in 1754. Now, the reason why they call it the 7 Years' War is because they only count the years Britain was fighting against France. Um, they really don't care about the Native American stuff. So that's why they call it the 7 Years' War. But this was really, for all intents and purposes, one of the first world wars because this had implications in different places in the world. So, but as far as the North American continent, where it really affects us, um, France and Britain were were feuding over their empirical boundaries on the North American continent. And that's what got everything started. But it's all about taking Native American land. So the people who are always losing, it's a fight between two European countries, but the people who are really losing are the Native Americans who really have no stance in the war. And that led us to Pontiac's War because, of course, the Seven Years' War ends in 1763. Well, in 1761, as this is winding down, the French had a lot of the land west of the Appalachian Mountains. In fact, they had it all the way up until the Louisiana Territory, all the way up until the late 1790s, which was well, no, until the 19th century, because um, the Haitian Revolution is what made them sell the Louisiana Territory to the United States. But in the settlement of the war with the Treaty of Paris, the land that the French was controlling with the Native Americans went to England. And the French had a better relationship with the Native Americans, and the English didn't. And it was clear to the natives that they had to defend themselves against the English because the English had the intention to continue to take land. So they go back to war again. Now you think about it. We got all these wars. We got Stono Rebellion. We got um, the 7 Years' War that lasted 9 years. And England is going, wait a minute, we're paying way too much money for ammunition, all these wars. We're going to tell all of the colonies, we're going to make a proclamation line. Anything west of the Appalachian Mountains, don't mess with. You know, we're gonna have peace for a while. We're gonna make money. We don't want that. Well, here's the problem. In the 7 Years' War, they were fighting over. Remember, it wasn't England coming to fight. It was the militia, the quasi British citizens that were colonists that were actually fighting this war. And they were fighting this war over boundaries. Well, that meant we were trying to push them back to get this land. Well, now England is telling the colonists, you can't go past this proclamation line. I just fought this war. You've been over on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. Now I can't get what I was fighting for. So they just ignore it. And so they just started going because think about it. You have the um, consumer revolution where these people are beginning to live lives where they're moving up in society. They're having the thoughts of individualism that is coming with the Great Awakening. And then they're having these tax issues. They're having, I'm getting taxed on things, but I don't get to vote on it because we're actually a remote site. England is the main site. They're questioning spiritual leadership. They're questioning government leadership. Now, then don't forget in the last chapter, I came over as an indentured servant. I was supposed to get land. At the end, I didn't get land. These people are feeling like they're getting cheated. And it's going all the way up until 1766, which is when the proclamation line was made. But now we know in 1775, that's when it all broke loose. But this is the speed that we're building up toward the colonists going, okay, we're not playing this game anymore. So, um, just a couple of things that you're going to have to remember. What are we going to have to remember? Number one, that South Carolina had the unique distinction of having um, a greater enslaved population than free population. And the improvements in all of the improvements following the increased opportunities for colonists to purchase goods really um, dealt with manufacturing, transportation, and the availability of credit. They did not have a standardized currency, so remember that. Um, uh, South Carolina had had a higher population of enslaved people, and that the Quakers were the first to turn against slavery. And the Great Awakening obviously begins in the North, so that's going to be in New England. And what the Pontiac's War resulted in the creation of the Proclamation Line, 1763. Very important.